I was the chief prosecutor for the military commissions at Guantanamo Bay for a couple of years, and I resigned because of the political interference from the Bush administration and pressuring me to use evidence obtained by torture. We're very good about lecturing other countries about the rule of law. If North Korea does something or the Iranians do something, we tell them they've got to respect the rule of law. We've had multiple judges and multiple officials from both sides that have said we tortured as part of the global war on terrorism, but we've done absolutely nothing about it. So we're very good about lecturing, but we're not putting our words into practice, so we're setting a bad example. I had hoped this administration was going to be more serious when they talk about the rule of law, and it wasn't just a platitude, it was a real practice. This administration and the prior administration, at least on national security matters, are carbon copies. It's the Bush third term, in essence, on national security. Now, I understand that the Obama administration has had the economy and healthcare and immigration and other extraordinarily important issues to deal with, but I think they've really just capitulated on national security and let the Cheneys of the world drive the narrative. Special interests have been very effective in using money in advertising. If you look now at the, repealing the Bush tax breaks for the upper income bracket, which is what, 2% of the population, but I guarantee you there's a much larger segment than 2% that are up in arms about taxing the rich. And it doesn't apply to them. They're not in that top 2% group, but somehow if you spend enough time and you get the talking heads, they're ready to take up pitchforks and pistols. An example I used when I was speaking today was on healthcare reform, which was a very contentious issue. We ended up with legislation that was half a loaf, I guess, which is better than no loaf, but it wasn't what it could have been. I did an article for Huffington Post last week called "Treating Kids Like Dogs, If Only." I live outside of Washington, D.C. There is a gentleman, Vernon Hill, who grew up not too far from where I live, who is one of the wealthiest individuals in America. He has a 50,000 square foot house, and his wife and their little Duffy live in their house. Well, little Duffy had some bad teeth, and Vernon Hill had insurance that paid for the teeth to be removed. And little Duffy's living a happy life. DeMonte Driver, who was a 12-year-old who lived right outside of D.C., had a bad tooth. His mother didn't have a job and his Medicaid had lapsed. It would have cost $80 to remove his bad tooth. Instead of removing it, it got infected and the infection spread to his brain, which required brain surgery twice, and eventually the 12-year-old boy died because he didn't have insurance to provide for getting his tooth removed. So it's a sad commentary where in this country, a rich man's dog is treated better than a poor woman's child. And we wound up footing the bill when he had to go to the hospital for the 2 brain surgeries, where for $80 that tooth could have been removed. But people were up in arms over health care, that it was socialized medicine and they were going to have their health care rationed, and we ended up with something that pleased no one. If you look at other countries, Australia for instance, I know their laws are different than ours, but their voter participation rate in national elections is about 95%. For us, we're lucky if we can get 50% of the eligible voters to make the effort to go out and vote, which is a sad commentary. We're among the lowest voter participation rates in the free world. If people aren't serious about their citizenship and we continue on the path that we're on of this divisiveness, us versus them, win or lose, no compromise, I think we can see where we're headed, and it's not a pretty picture that I can imagine. I think people are disillusioned. They feel like the elections have been bought and that their voice doesn't matter, and why make the effort? If it's not going to affect the outcome, might as well just stay home and not cast the vote. And special interests have been very good in dividing society, putting people in classes in competition and silencing a lot of people and keeping them out of the process. But again, if you go back to our founding, it was a country that was built on a government of, by, and for the people. And so the people have to make a decision. They can't complain about their government if they're not willing to get off their butts and get educated and get involved and go to the polling place and cast their vote. You sow what you reap, and if you're not willing to make the effort, then you've got no reason to complain.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing.